After deciding to divorce Marco, I began deliberately keeping my distance from him and stopped disturbing him. When he walked over and took my hand in front of our colleagues, I instinctively dodged. After work, his car was parked downstairs waiting for me, but I pretended not to see it and fled into a taxi as if escaping. At the airport, my friend asked me why I had not called my own husband to pick me up. Are you afraid he'll be tired? Or do you feel sorry for him and can't bear to trouble him? I shook my head. Neither. My relationship with him isn't as good as you imagine. We are more like the most familiar strangers. You might not believe this, but right now, I feel more at ease getting along with strangers than with him. Before I finished speaking, a sound came from behind me. I turned around. Marco, dressed in a black suit, had appeared there at some unknown time. His face was pale, and the hand hanging at his side clenched tightly. Chapter 01. I awkwardly tugged at the corners of my lips. That familiar feeling of being at a loss whenever I faced him surged up all at once again. Marco's gaze was heavy as he studied me, something I could not understand surging in the depths of his eyes. Before I could react, he strode over and placed his palm on my suitcase. Seeing that I refused to let go, his gaze suddenly darkened, and his voice grew even lower. If you don't let go, I don't mind carrying you along with it. Caught off guard, I suddenly released my hand and took a large step back, trying to keep my distance. He looked at me, the corner of his lips stiffened, and his face became even darker. He forcefully pulled me along and stuffed me into the passenger seat. I said I wanted to go back to the company, and that taking his car would make it easy for colleagues to see us, which would be inconvenient. Thank you for helping me with my luggage. I'll just get out and take a taxi. There was a politeness and distance in my tone that even I had not noticed. The road from the airport to the company was not far, but the thought of being alone with Marco in an enclosed space made me resist for no reason. But he said, "What are you afraid of? We are legally married. If they see us, then we can just make it public." I lowered my head, and my palm tightened unconsciously. Once, I had wanted to make it public too, but now that we were about to divorce, making it public would only add unnecessary trouble. Chapter 02. Marco and I had already grown distant long ago. As the president of Dingxing Group, he had always drawn a clear line between public and private matters. I understood his temper, so even at my most difficult moments, I had never asked him for help. Even when the project I had spent several months working overtime through countless nights to finish was taken by someone else because of one sentence from my rival. My husband's uncle is a senior executive at Dingxing. Even the boss of our company has to curry favor with my uncle when he sees him. What can a low-level employee with no background like you use to compete with me? The project that had already been within my grasp became someone else's. I had wavered before too. When it came to connections, all of Dingxing belonged to Marco. He did not even need to appear in person. Just one message from him would be enough for me to take back the project that should have belonged to me. That night, I deliberated for a long time, and finally could not help asking, "I heard you're planning to invest in our company?" Marco was still as cold, composed, and restrained as usual. Hearing this, he did not even lift his head. He only gave a faint hum. "Then if someone in the company bullies me, will you back me up?" I tried to keep my tone light, but because I was too nervous, a dense layer of sweat still seeped across my palms. Marco raised his head, his gaze heavy as he studied me. He frowned, his expression as if saying, "Are you serious?" Being stared at by him made me feel unbearably embarrassed. I forced a smile at the corner of my mouth and was just about to brush it off casually to end this awkward conversation when Marco spoke. His Adam's apple bobbed, and his tone was low. "The investment is a decision made by the board. Whether it will specifically be your company has not been finally confirmed yet. Although Dingxing is the investor, when it comes to your company's internal decisions, we still adhere to the principle of interfering as little as possible." He said it very clearly, and I did not humiliate myself further by continuing to ask. Marco's principles would not be broken for anyone. I had not been able to become that exception, but I had not expected that Selena could. Chapter 03. That day, Marco appeared at the company as the largest investor. Selena was the project leader parachuted in from above. The colleagues were all discussing it. "What do you think the relationship is between the new team leader and the prince of the group? Our boss tried for so long to secure that investment and couldn't get it. As soon as the team leader arrived, the funding came through. What else could their relationship be? Selena is so beautiful. Isn't it normal for the prince to like her? If he doesn't like her, is he supposed to like corporate drones like us? Then I'd really have to question the prince's taste. Don't you think so, Emma? The colleagues spoke one after another, and the topic was suddenly thrown to me. I pressed my lips together, and my voice unconsciously lowered because of my lack of confidence. Probably not. I heard Marco seems to be married. Why are you so sure? The prince's wife seems to have never shown her face. Maybe team leader Selena is his hidden wife. I think so too. Didn't the prince come here specially because he was afraid his wife would be bullied and came to back her up? Otherwise, how do you explain why the prince cares so much about the new team leader? If they aren't husband and wife, what else could they be? I was stumped. No one knew about my relationship with Marco, and I had no way to explain to them exactly why Marco treated Selena so well. I wanted to ask him too. Weren't his principles impossible to break? Then why could Selena be the exception? You've misunderstood. I'm Marco's ex-girlfriend. We broke up 3 years ago. Although Selena said this to explain, when it fell into people's ears, it carried a different implication. Chapter 04. 2 months ago, Marco's ex-girlfriend called him. That night, Marco, who had quit smoking a long time ago, unexpectedly smoked on the balcony for the entire night. When the first light of dawn appeared, he still could not hold back and went out. After daybreak, I wrapped myself in the blanket and called him many times, but none of the calls were answered. His assistant also did not know where Marco had gone. That day, the company had a very important meeting, and all the shareholders were waiting for him. Marco, who had always treated work as his life, unexpectedly missed it. For a long time afterward, every once in a while, Marco would receive calls from the exact same number, one with no saved name. When he answered the calls, he would avoid me. I was worried, so I followed him once and overheard it. On the other end of the phone was the soft sobbing of a woman. Marco's tall, slender figure had his back to me. I could not see his expression at that time. I only heard him gently comforting the woman on the other end. So it turned out that the ex-girlfriend who always made Marco get up in the middle of the night to take calls was Selena. The doubts that had been accumulating in the bottom of my heart all this time broke through the soil uncontrollably. I blocked Marco in the underground parking garage and questioned him. Marco, Selena is your ex-girlfriend, right? Do you regret it and want to rekindle your old relationship with her? Or have the two of you already had something going on behind my back over the past few months? Marco looked at me coldly. I pressed my lips tightly together and looked back at him as well. The silent confrontation made even the air around us turn stiff. Marco's assistant first glanced at Marco tentatively, then hesitantly looked toward me and spoke to ease the atmosphere. Madam, you've misunderstood Marco. Apart from the time you called me to ask, later on, every time Marco met with Miss Selena, I was present. Miss Selena has been having a very hard time recently. Something happened in her family, and her own health also developed problems. This assistant, Paul, was the only person by Marco's side who knew about our relationship. Paul was only halfway through speaking when Marco suddenly looked over. He impatiently tapped the car window and urged him. Paul, get in. Emma, before you asked that question, did you think it through? Have you ever considered how much trouble words like that could cause her life if someone with bad intentions overheard them? Before the car left, Marco threw down those words with a cold face. His gaze was so cold it was like a blade, stabbing straight into my heart. Those words had been bottled up in my heart for many days, but after they came out, I did not feel the relief of having a burden lifted. Paul's words made me reflect. Had I really misunderstood Marco? Marco and I fell into a cold war. I wanted to communicate with him, but he was always on business trips. On the days he was not traveling, he left early and returned late. He and I had no chance to meet at all. During this time, I sent him many messages, and only then did he reply to one. Marco, are you still blaming me? That day, I didn't think before speaking and said the wrong things, but I think we should sit down and have a proper talk. Are you free tomorrow? I'm not blaming you. Tomorrow I have to go to City C for a meeting. If there's anything, we'll talk when I get back. Sleep early. Don't overthink it. He said he was going on a business trip, but that very night, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. The person on the other end told me to go to a hotel under Dingxing's name at 3 o'clock the next afternoon. Chapter 05. It was not yet 3 o'clock when Selena and Marco appeared at the hotel entrance one after the other. I clenched my palms and walked over, forcing down my emotions as I questioned him. So this is the business trip you were talking about? A business trip with your ex-girlfriend on a hotel king-size bed? Only after I finished speaking did I see that many employees were following behind Marco. Paul wanted to explain to me in difficulty, but Marco suppressed him with a cold face. After everyone else left first, Marco's brows were tightly furrowed. When he looked at me, his face was still frighteningly dark. Instead of going to such great lengths to follow me like this, wouldn't it be better to just divorce? Do you want to divorce? His tone was condescending, certain that I would not divorce him. It was as if a basin of icy water had been poured over my head. My whole body turned cold, and I froze in place, unable to move. Marco pressed his brow wearily. His tone softened a little, but it still carried impatience. If you're done making a scene, go back by yourself. He did not spare me another glance. Turning around, he walked around me without looking back. That afternoon, I wandered the streets in a daze for a long time. Without realizing it, I somehow arrived at the old family residence. The old master had never thought highly of our marriage in the first place. When he learned that I wanted a divorce, he did not react much. Has Marco agreed? He asked. I nodded. He wants the divorce more than I do. Chapter 06. When the car started, Marco's phone rang. It was Selena calling. Marco, I've landed. Have you arrived? I'm waiting for you here at the exit. I brought you a gift. Selena's sweet, coquettish voice made the atmosphere inside the car even more awkward at that moment. Marco almost immediately turned off the car speaker. I could not hear anything Selena said after that. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Marco first glance at me. Only then did he pick up his phone and reply. Something came up at the last minute. Paul is at the airport. Just contact him directly. So Marco had come to pick up Selena. I closed my eyes and pretended to rest. I did not question him endlessly like before. During the days I was on a business trip, the company gossip group had been full of Marco and Selena's names. The project could not be finished in time, so everyone worked overtime together. But Selena could leave on time. Sorry, everyone. I have to leave first. Marco is waiting for me outside. Everyone felt resentful. We were all employees. So why could she be so relaxed? An employee from the HR department who knew some inside information replied sourly. She's the prince's precious darling. On the day she joined the company, the prince specifically gave instructions. Selena isn't in good health, and the prince feels sorry for her and is afraid she'll get tired. True. If she gets too tired here, how will she serve our prince when she gets home? Raised eyebrow, wicked smile. Is it what I'm thinking? Do you think the prince is keeping someone outside? Does his wife know? So what if she knows? They've been married for so many years and still haven't gone public. His wife is basically a ninja. Look at whether the prince or Selena even takes her seriously. In the company, when have they not been open and above board? They're even more high profile than the legitimate wife. Selena has been seeing doctors recently. She's not in good health. You know that. My emotions did not fluctuate much. I only nodded calmly. The car fell back into a deathly silence. Marco opened his mouth, several times seeming like he wanted to speak but stopping himself. Finally, he spoke. Was this business trip very busy? After I came back from the old residence last time, I took on a colleague's work and went on a business trip in her place for a month. Perhaps because he discovered that I was not at home. Marco called me 3 times, but I did not answer any of them. According to the old master, I still had to wait another 2 months before divorcing. As compensation, apart from the property I was entitled to after the divorce, the old master would transfer an additional $5 million in cash to me from his personal account. It was okay, I replied absent-mindedly, counting the days in my heart. I did not notice that Marco's fingertips on the steering wheel were gradually turning white from gripping too hard. I was thinking that I still needed to wait 1 more month before I could divorce. Chapter 07. The hotel project last time was decided at the last minute. The day it ended, I flew to City C. Paul has records of my itinerary. If you need them. I did not know if it was my imagination, but ever since I got off the plane, I felt that Marco was talking especially much today. He had always been a man of few words. Yet now he gave people the feeling that he was searching for things to say. No need. Sorry, I caused you trouble last time. Only then did I understand. It turned out that the reason Marco had been hesitating all this way was because of what had happened at the hotel last time. If it could make him this troubled, then I must have embarrassed him badly that day. From now on, with full sincerity, I had not yet finished the words of my promise when Marco suddenly slammed on the brakes and stopped the car abruptly. That's not what I meant. His black eyes stared at me without blinking. His stare left me completely confused, and my mind began to replay what he had said. He said he would have his assistant send me his itinerary so that I would not go to the company to bother him again. The confusion on my face seemed to sting Marco again. His brows were tightly knitted, and I did not know what he was irritated about. I mean, in the future, if you want to know anything, you can ask me directly, including things about Selena. We are husband and wife. I don't want you to misunderstand. His hand reached over. The instant our fingertips touched, I trembled sharply and withdrew my hand. There's no misunderstanding. My tone was calm, without the slightest fluctuation. Marco's hand froze in midair. His fingertips seemed to be trembling slightly, thinking about my behavior just now. The atmosphere in the car at this moment seemed somewhat awkward. Marco looked at me, his expression as if he had swallowed a fly. I lowered my head and fiddled with the tie on the hem of my clothes, inevitably feeling a little nervous. If we continued to stay stopped, it would probably be time to get off work. I did not know how long passed. Only when a dense layer of sweat seeped into my palm did the person beside me finally withdraw his gaze. He started the car again. Chapter 08. Downstairs at the company building, a colleague saw me and greeted me from afar. As she spoke, she walked toward me. Thank you so much this time. My son is in his final year of high school recently, and as parents, we're under so much pressure every day. This business trip was originally supposed to be mine. Thankfully, you volunteered to go. Did you adapt well over there during that month? When you're done being busy with work, I'll treat you to a meal. I really can't thank you enough. After my colleague pulled me aside and said a whole string of things, she finally belatedly noticed the person behind me. Marco's gaze fell on me, his eyes dark and heavy. I did not know what he was thinking. You just came back and happened to run into Marco. Does that mean our group's project won't have to worry about funding anymore? Without leaving a trace, I widened the distance between Marco and me. Is Marco here to pick up team leader Selena? She happens to be out. Before my colleague could finish speaking, Marco interrupted her in a low voice. You've misunderstood. I'm here to drop Emma off. My heart tightened. I did not know what Marco meant by saying this to my colleague. Did he not know that this would cause misunderstandings? I hurriedly picked up the conversation. Yes, it was hard to get a taxi at the airport. Luckily, I happened to run into Marco. Thank you so much this time. You must be busy, so we won't disturb you any longer. After saying that, afraid that Marco would say something shocking again, I hurriedly pulled my colleague's hand and walked inside. I did not notice that behind me, the man remained standing in the same place the entire time, his black eyes as if covered in frost. Chillingly cold. Chapter 09. Right at the end of the workday, I rushed as fast as I could and finally organized the results of the past month's work and the reimbursement forms. Then submitted them, watching my colleagues leave work one after another. I leaned against my workstation and, in a daze, unexpectedly thought of the days before Selena appeared. He did not believe in gods or Buddhas, yet he was still willing to accompany me up tens of thousands of steps and personally hang the love lock symbolizing growing old together at the highest temple roof. When I had first entered the industry, a client I was eating with forced me to drink because I was young. I drank too much and ran to the restroom to throw up. When I came back, I saw Marco. He sat in the main seat. There was no expression on his face, yet he carried the innate pressure of someone in power. The small manager who had forced me to drink was held down by others and forced to drink bottle after bottle. If Marco did not say stop, no one dared to stop. That person struggled and crawled to kneel by his feet, begging him, Marco, I was wrong. Please let me go. Just treat me like a fart and let me go. He cried and begged Marco while slapping himself in the face. Marco placed the sole of his shoe on the man's shoulder and casually kicked him away. Should I let him go? He walked over and held my hand, Seeing me nod blankly, he suddenly smiled. The laughter seemed to come from the bottom of his heart, flowing out from his throat. "Get lost," Marco said with his mouth that I should not think of relying on his power. But he still helped me. I knew that. Actually, it had not been just that time. Many partners who had tried to make things difficult for me or bully me would be dealt with a few days later. Afterward, their attitude toward me changed. Paul told me it was Marco who had warned them behind the scenes, but he never said anything. Although Marco doesn't say it, he cares about you the most. He can't bear to truly let you suffer grievances. My own wife is someone even I can't bear to make cry. And you people. I suddenly opened my eyes and woke from the dream. Everyone in the room had already left. Downstairs, Marco's Maybach had been parked there for who knew how long. Before I could react, he had already walked up to me. "Marco." A familiar, surprised voice came from behind me. Almost immediately, I turned sideways and abruptly walked around Marco. Then, without looking back, I fled into a taxi as if escaping. Marco's hand, which had originally wanted to take my bag for me, hung suspended in midair. At this moment, his palm clenched tightly, and the veins on the back of his hand bulged clearly because of how hard he was gripping. Only after getting into the car did I discover that Marco had sent me many messages. "I'll pick you up tonight. Where do you want to eat tonight? Are you still busy? Don't tire yourself out too much. I'm here, waiting for you downstairs." I deleted and rewrote the words in the chat box several times before finally sending one message. "Sorry. I only just saw this. My car arrived. So I'm going home first. I already ate dinner at the company." As soon as the message was sent, the top showed that he was typing. The words, "typing," flashed again and again before Marco's message finally came through. "You already ate?" He seemed very surprised. I did not think too much and replied, "Yes." This time, he replied very quickly, "Today is our 3rd wedding anniversary." I froze for a moment, but only for a moment. "Sorry. I forgot." I told the truth, since I was already planning to divorce. Naturally, I had not kept something like an anniversary in mind. This time, a long time passed, and Marco did not reply again. Chapter 10. In the middle of the night, while half asleep and half awake, I was pulled out from under the covers by someone. Marco had probably just come back. His body was still carrying the chill of the night. I shivered from the cold and instantly became much more awake. Marco's eyes were very red. He had been drinking, and at this moment, he was unexpectedly clingy. Looking at the extra ring on my ring finger, I suddenly remembered that when we had first gotten married, I had once carefully tested Marco too. At that time, he had not even lifted his head. After signing the papers, he casually tossed a contract worth tens of millions to his assistant. Only then did he raise his head and look at me carelessly. Using a ring to declare ownership is the behavior of the weak. At the end of the day, it means that person is not confident enough in themselves. The next day, when Marco woke up, I had already gone to work. He looked at the empty study and turned over. The sunlight refracted by the ring happened to shine into his eyes. Marco blinked, and his eyes unexpectedly grew wet. Chapter 11. Marco and I returned once again to a state where we had nothing to say to each other. He slept in the study, and I slept in the master bedroom. We rarely saw each other, except when I had just come back from work, and Marco would hear the sound at the door and come out to take a look. When I went to the door to pick up takeout, he would also just happen to come out to make himself a cup of coffee. I thought this kind of life would continue until the day I could bring up the divorce. Until I found out I was pregnant. The child was not mine alone, even if we were going to divorce. As the father, Marco had the right to know of its existence. He even had the right to be involved in whether it stayed or not. I threw the pregnancy test into the trash can. The phone screen lit up and went dark again before I finally gathered the courage to dial Marco's number. The phone rang for a very long time, as if a century had passed. For one instant, I even thought that if Marco insisted on keeping the child, then this marriage was not necessarily something we had to end. "What's wrong, Emma? Emma?" "Marco." My voice was so hoarse it was almost unrecognizable. The moment I opened my mouth, I choked up. "Marco, come here quickly. It's almost my turn." The words "I'm pregnant" were covered by Selena's voice from the other end of the phone. "Sorry. Emma, it's a little noisy here. And I didn't hear you just now. It was very noisy on his side. I heard Selena and different people raising their voices as they urged him. He responded a few times, and his voice sounded very anxious. Yet he still patiently waited for my answer. It's nothing. After a long time, I heard my own voice. Chapter 12. After coming out of the operating room, I sat in the corridor, waiting to get my medicine. 2 young nurses who were still in their internship period sat beside me and chatted. That patient in the radiotherapy department is really fortunate. Every time she comes, her husband accompanies her. I heard her husband is the president of a listed company. He has no shortage of money. The doctors who performed her surgery were all hired by her husband from overseas at a high price. If he's that rich, why not just go abroad for treatment? Because they can't bear to be apart, I guess. If she goes abroad, the young couple won't see each other more than a few times a year. Anyway, her husband is so rich and so willing to spend money on her that she can enjoy priority treatment wherever she is. You weren't here the first time she came. The scene that day was much bigger than today. The hospital director personally received her, and the entire department stopped consultations. As the 2 spoke, their gazes suddenly landed behind me, and then they stopped gossiping. Why did you come to the hospital? Are you feeling unwell? Under the surprised gazes of the 2 interns, Marco familiarly placed his palm against my forehead. Good. You don't have a fever. Why are your lips so pale? I'll call Oliver over to take a look. Oliver was Marco's childhood friend and also the vice president of this hospital. I clenched my palms tightly, regretting in my heart how I could have forgotten such important information. I'm fine. A colleague wasn't feeling well, so I came with her. Even speaking took some effort from me. We'll be leaving soon. If you have something to do, go take care of it first. Don't worry about me. Marco stood in front of me. His gaze swept across my face, and he clearly had no intention of leaving. You don't look right. Be good and let someone take a look. It won't take too long. Seeing him open the contact interface on his phone, my heart rose to my throat. I said there's no need. Do you not understand? I suddenly raised my voice. If you like accompanying Selena so much, then go accompany her. There's no need to act hypocritically here with me. Don't be angry. I didn't mean to force you. I was just worried, perhaps frightened by the disgust in my eyes. Marco's voice became somewhat helpless. Her condition suddenly worsened. I shook him off and was just about to get up and walk outside when a woman's voice suddenly rang out behind me. Number 43. Emma, your payment slip is ready. I watched helplessly as Marco took the slip from the doctor's hand. He froze in place, his body swaying almost imperceptibly. When he raised his head again to look at me, his face was deathly pale. Voluntary termination of pregnancy? Chapter 13. Along the way, I tried several times to make things clear to Marco, but every time I had only just opened my mouth. He interrupted me with various topics. I asked the doctor, right now, you need to eat more foods that nourish your energy and blood. I asked the housekeeper to buy red dates, as well as pork liver, duck blood. You rest first. I'll go check the medicine, just like now. Marco placed me on the sofa and immediately began bustling around. He found a very thick blanket and covered me with it, but throughout the whole process, he did not make eye contact with me. Even when he touched my lower abdomen, I clearly saw his fingertips trembling. When your body recovers, let's go live in Australia for a while. Haven't you always wanted to see kangaroos up close? When the time comes, we can buy a farm and raise some for you to play with. Marco kept talking non-stop, sounding as if he was saying whatever came to mind. I could not keep up with his thoughts, and I was in no mood to talk about any of this with him. After I tried to interrupt several times, only for my voice to be drowned out by his, I clenched my palms and finally raised my voice. Enough, Marco. Let's get divorced. The word divorce echoed endlessly through the empty room. The cup in Marco's hand fell to the floor. The milk that had just been heated spilled across the floor, mixing with shattered glass and splashing everywhere. Marco crouched down helplessly and began picking up the shards on the floor. The glass cut his palm. Blood fell with tears into the milk, blooming into scarlet flowers one after another. I promised Grandpa that I would wait until the European project ends. But that is all. Chapter 14. The next day, I moved out of the villa. Because of the miscarriage, I asked the company for half a month of leave. A colleague from HR told me that Marco had specifically gone to the company to give instructions, asking them to let me take 3 months of paid leave. Over the phone, my colleague gossiped and pressed me. Emma, is something going on with you? Why is Marco so attentive to you? Is he pursuing you? No. How is that possible? I'm experienced. And from what I can see, he is my husband. Even through the screen, I could feel my colleague's shock. In 5 days, he'll be my ex-husband. I teased calmly, when there were still 2 days left before the divorce. I had not expected the old master to contact me again. I am an old fool, and I have done something wrong again. Only 2 months had passed, yet the old master looked much more weathered. Back then, when Marco and that little girl Selena were dating, I looked down on her. I was determined to break them apart and find Marco a girl of equal social standing. I gave her $5 million to leave, but she didn't accept it. He smiled bitterly, paused, then continued. I had the butler investigate her family situation. Her father was addicted to gambling. When he saw the check, his face nearly split open from smiling. I could never allow Marco to be with the daughter of someone like that. We wealthy families are not afraid of our descendants having no talent. If they have no talent, we have plenty of methods to make them shine. But gambling, drugs, and vice are things that no amount of money or power can save. The old master's eyes were clouded with the traces of time, yet they remained clear. Later, that gambling addict took the money. I don't know what method he used, but in any case, he took that girl away. He sighed, as if regretful, yet hesitant. These years, Marco has always hated me. That $5 million cost the gambling addict his life, and the girl was also diagnosed with a terminal illness. The sin was mine, but Marco has always felt that it was his fault. He found the best doctors to treat that girl and supported her dreams. Marco treats her well purely out of guilt, to atone for my sins. This old man's sins. After so many years, Marco has long had no other feelings for her. The one he loves now is you. Grandpa can promise you that he absolutely has not done anything to wrong you. He knows he was wrong now, but he doesn't dare see you himself. I had no choice but to put aside this old face and come ask you, must the two of you really divorce? You are a good child too. How did things have to reach the point of divorce? Chapter 15. Grandpa, may I ask you something? Back then, when I said I wanted a divorce, why did you agree almost without hesitation? I shook my head and looked at him calmly. Perhaps he had not expected me to ask this question. The old master's usually composed face now carried a hint of difficulty. Back then, did you also think, like I did, that Marco's heart was with Selena? You also thought Marco wanted to get back together with Selena, so you wanted to fulfill their wish. The old master did not answer, but he did not deny it either. Actually, after Selena appeared, I kept wondering whether I was being too sensitive about things between Marco and me. The thought of divorce flashed through my mind countless times, but then I would think of how good Marco had been to me. Those thoughts were like two little people, each insisting on their own argument, fighting inside my head. Then one day, I suddenly figured it out. I thought that whether I was being too sensitive or not, the sadness this marriage brought me was real, and the heartache Marco caused me was real too. So Grandpa, I'm sorry. There is no possibility between Marco and me anymore. These words seemed more like they were said for myself to hear. After saying them, my heart was filled with a calm and certainty I had never had before. Even my colleagues, the nurses at the hospital, and even you once mistakenly thought that the person Marco loved was Selena. I lived with him day and night, so how could I possibly not feel the drifting of his heart? Actually, a very, very long time ago, I already sensed this person's existence until Selena truly appeared in front of me. Perhaps in that moment, my heart completely died. Suddenly, the sound of something heavy colliding came from behind me. I turned back and happened to meet Marco's eyes. His eyes were bloodshot, and his clothes were somewhat wrinkled. He looked much more haggard, although I did not know when he had arrived. Judging from his reaction, he had probably been standing at the doorway listening for a very long time. Chapter 16. On the day of the divorce, at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Marco handed me a divorce agreement, in addition to the $5 million the old master had promised. Marco very generously transferred 3 properties under his name and 100 million in cash to me. Emma, after you got pregnant, did you ever, even for a single moment, think about keeping this child? His knuckles gripped the document in his hand tightly, and his voice was so hoarse it barely sounded like itself. I did. Do you still remember that phone call that ended in a hurry? Before Selena's voice appeared, I had actually wanted to tell you that you were going to be a father. In just a brief moment, the light in Marco's eyes lit up and then went out again. But I didn't want my child to be born without enough love. I didn't want even the two of us to have to wait until you took care of someone else first before you turned back and occasionally glanced at us. I know Selena has a terminal illness, and you couldn't possibly abandon her. So we're divorcing. From now on, you won't have to have any concerns anymore. You can take care of her wholeheartedly. You can even live together. The only obstacle between you two no longer exists. Chapter 17. After that, I never saw Marco again. However, there was one time when I ran into Paul at the supermarket while he was shopping with his wife. He insisted on telling me about Marco's recent situation. He said that after the divorce, Marco was not doing well, and his mood was getting worse and worse. Several times, he had made newly hired intern assistants cry from scolding them. When you were around, the president still had some human warmth about him. Occasionally, he would even smile at us. Now Marco practically wants to live in the office, even if he doesn't say it. I know it's because he's afraid of going home alone and facing those empty rooms. It hurts him. Selena is only being kept alive by medication now. The president hired the best caregivers for her. Please don't misunderstand. After divorcing you, the president has remained single this whole time. He and Selena have never. Paul had one hand resting on the edge of my shopping cart and was talking nonstop. Only when his wife elbowed him in the lower abdomen did he cover his stomach and shut his mouth. He talks too much. He's like this at home too. Once he starts, he never stops. Please don't mind. The woman smiled at me apologetically. She's already divorced. Why are you pestering her with all this? Showing off that you know how to talk? After the two of them pushed the cart some distance away, the woman finally could not help speaking. Don't be angry. Honey, I just feel that the president spends every day like a lonely old man, neither crying nor laughing. He seems quite pitiful. He deserves it. I've discovered there's something wrong with your thinking. You're actually sympathizing with a scumbag. Marco isn't a scumbag. He didn't do anything. After leaving the supermarket, unsurprisingly, I saw Marco waiting at the entrance. The man who had always been composed now looked unusually awkward. Paul called you. Marco's family had a housekeeper specifically responsible for shopping. When we had been together before, unless it was to accompany me, Marco almost never personally came to the supermarket under normal circumstances. Marco nodded and somewhat awkwardly took the shopping bags from my hand. You should give Paul a raise. I just heard him arguing with his wife, saying that you aren't a scumbag. I smiled and teased him. Marco smiled along with me. The corners of his mouth rose stiffly, and his smile looked terribly strained. Chapter 18. Neither of us spoke along the way. Not until the car stopped downstairs at the hotel where I was staying did Marco finally fail to hold back and ask me, "Why are you staying here? Are you short on money? I'll have Paul transfer you. The money you gave me is enough for me to live on for the rest of my life." I shook my head and calmly interrupted him. "I'm leaving. I sold all the houses I received in the divorce settlement. If nothing unexpected happens, we will never see each other again." Before getting out of the car, I finally curved my lips and looked at him. Goodbye, Marco. Chapter 19. Goodbye, stranger.